For a century, every textbook said the same thing. Farming came first, then villages, then temples. Göbekli Tepe proved that sequence backwards. On a limestone ridge in southeastern Turkey, hunter-gatherers with no pottery, no metal, and no domesticated grain quarried 20-ton pillars and arranged them in rings 11,500 years ago. That's older than Stonehenge by 7,000 years, older than the first planted wheat field by at least 500. The people who built it had no permanent homes. They had no kings. And yet they moved stones that modern engineers would need cranes to lift. The question isn't how they built it. The question is why the building came before everything we assumed had to come first. A German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt drove up the hill in 1994 expecting a medieval cemetery. Locals had been plowing around the stones for generations. A previous survey in the 1960s had dismissed the site as Byzantine. Schmidt looked at one exposed T-shaped pillar and knew within minutes that every earlier report was wrong. He began digging. What came out of the soil rewrote the calendar. Radiocarbon dates on organic material trapped between the stones returned readings of 9600 BCE, the tail end of the last ice age. Schmidt spent the next 20 years excavating less than 5% of the site. Ground-penetrating radar suggests at least 16 more stone rings are still buried beneath the hill. He died in 2014. Most of Göbekli Tepe has still never been touched. The pillars are not blank. Foxes coil around the shafts. Scorpions march in relief. Vultures hold severed human heads. Snakes descend in rows of 40 and 50. On Pillar 43, the so-called vulture stone, a sequence of symbols has been read by some researchers as a date marker for a comet impact. Others dismiss that reading entirely. The debate is not settled, and that was never explained to most viewers. What is certain, the carvings are not decorative. They repeat. They follow rules. The same animals appear in the same postures across different enclosures built centuries apart. Someone was transmitting a system. A grammar of images carved into limestone by people who, according to every prior model, should not have been capable of abstraction at this scale. Here is the problem the site creates. Agriculture, according to the old model, produced surplus. Surplus produced leisure. Leisure produced religion, art, and monumental building. Göbekli Tepe inverts the entire chain. The builders were foragers. They ate wild gazelle, wild aurochs, wild pistachios. Isotope analysis of the bones found on site confirms it. No domesticated species. And yet, within a few hundred years of Göbekli Tepe's construction, the world's first domesticated wheat, einkorn, appears 30 kilometers away on the slopes of Karatsada. Read that again. The temple came first, then farming. The simplest explanation is the one archaeologists resisted for a decade. People domesticated grain because they needed to feed the crowds that gathered to build and worship here. Around 8000 BCE, the builders did something no one has satisfactorily explained. They filled the enclosures in, deliberately, by hand. Tens of thousands of cubic meters of rubble, animal bone, and flint tools shoveled over the pillars until the rings disappeared under an artificial hill. The site was not abandoned. It was entombed. Some of the pillars were decapitated first. Their carved heads snapped off and placed carefully at the base. No later culture disturbed the burial. For 10,000 years, the hill sat under wheat fields, and the farmers above it never knew what they were walking on. Whatever Göbekli Tepe meant to the people who built it, it meant enough to bury, which no one has answered since. If the temple preceded the farm, every question we ask about early civilization needs to be rephrased. Sanxingdui, the Indus Valley, pre-dynastic Egypt. We keep looking for the economic engine, the grain, the trade route, the river. Göbekli Tepe suggests the engine was something harder to measure, the need to gather, the need to build something larger than any single band of humans could justify, the need to carve a vulture into stone and agree, collectively, that it mattered. Agriculture may have been a side effect of assembly, not its cause, a practical solution to a ritual problem. The civilization we inherited didn't begin when someone planted a seed. It began when someone convinced 100 strangers to lift a stone together. One more detail before you go. The tallest pillar at Göbekli Tepe weighs 50 tons. The nearest quarry is 400 meters away. The people who moved it had no wheel, no draft animals, and no written language. If you want more of this, the sites that refuse to fit the timeline, the channel goes deeper each week. And the carved figure at the center of enclosure D, the one shaped like a human with folded hands and a belt of foxes, it is almost certainly a self-portrait of the builders.